So what has it been like going from living in a neighborhood where I had nobody within walking distance or even really within miles of me that I was pals with to living within 5, 10, 15, 20-minute walk of what started out as a handful of people? All right, I am in the grad school of life, and today I will be defending my thesis. They don't want you to know that you don't need to belong to any institution to study things, okay? It's called popular social science of the people. This experiment had a sample size of 1. The research subject, Katherout, had tried for 2 years to befriend people in her neighborhood to no avail. All the while, she spent countless hour-long bus trips to see the friends she did have, most of them living 5 miles away in a different neighborhood. So under the influence of some very encouraging papers and findings of great merit, she decided to stop commuting to see her friends and just move walking distance to where they are. She has now been in the experimental site of her new neighborhood for a term length of over a year and has produced many findings. I want to experiment. It only has to be a year. I don't think this will be a mistake. I can't imagine I'll regret this. And this is where I find you today. Let's evaluate. My thesis will cover the following variables that played a role: spontaneity, coworking, aftercare, favors and errands, community care, campusification, and the multiplying effect. To help me publish my findings, like and comment. Maybe even subscribe. Living closer to my friends has meant that I am surrounded by care, which is so important in a world where, quite frankly, we are being taken advantage of at every turn. One thing that my friends unfortunately cannot directly protect me from, however, are data breaches, of all things. I have been getting a letter in the mail every full moon, it feels like, letting me know that my private information was leaked somehow. And by the time I'm hearing about it, my data could have already been out there for months. On average, it takes a company 277 days to report a data breach. Bank of America, Citigroup, and JP Morgan Chase have all announced breaches in the last year. So that's why it's really important to be talking about the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to then use that information to access my credit or bank accounts. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside their one app. You can go to my link, aura.com/Katherout, to try 14 days of that for free. And that will be enough time for Aura to figure out if any of your personal data is exposed. And you'll learn about it before one of those aforementioned companies are forced to notify you. I highly recommend doing this now, because the only thing that these companies will do once they notify you is offer free credit monitoring. Free credit monitoring after the fact, too little, too late. It's dark-sided that living in these modern times means that we do not have control over our own data and have autonomy over that. And it's overwhelming to consider all of the ways that we need to protect ourselves. But in this realm, Aura can help make you less vulnerable, and you can evaluate for yourself for 2 free weeks at aura.com/Katherout. And now on to the study results. So the first dimension of this experiment that really struck me was a heightened sense of spontaneity, in that when I lived like a 40 to 50 minute bus ride away from most of my friends each way, I really had to schedule out my hangs. Like, I couldn't really in a split second at 6 p.m. on a Thursday night text somebody and we meet up for 30 minutes, because it just wouldn't logistically make sense to do like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours round trip to hang out for like a little while on a weeknight. You know, like I really had to like establish that far out in advance so I could like build in the time, you know, are we meeting halfway, or is one of us going to the other, you know? And so my life became very like regimented and sort of like rigid, and it couldn't flex. And like, I understand a lot of people are sort of craving more flexibility and more spontaneity in their social life, because a lot of people, like, you schedule something out 2 weeks in advance and then you get to the day of and you're like, I am fatigued, or I'm having a flare up of some, you know, illness or whatnot. And you just don't feel like hanging, but you don't want to flake because you've literally been
you booked this out 2 weeks ago and you've been building up to it. So it's nice now as someone who used to be, I say I went from being type A to type A minus, and this move really helped with that, because now I would say I'm not fully someone who only has spontaneous hangs, but I'm definitely hybrid now, where I do schedule out hangs with people. Even I still have some friends that live in my neighborhood and are just either so busy or so scheduled that, like, if I do not schedule something with them, I will not see them, because if I spontaneously text them, they always have plans. So there's some people I still make plans with, but a lot of my social life is just planned out day of, day before, night of, and it really allows for a lot more freedom in terms of what you both mutually feel like doing. Like, there were multiple times where the weather ended up perking up unexpectedly and I wanted to go to the beach, and I could just text somebody, hey, do you want to go to the beach? And then within 10, 15 minutes, we've just like thrown our towels in a bag, grabbed our swimsuits, and we're walking to the bus stop. And that could not functionally happen where I was living before. There's times where I've texted somebody at sunset and been like, this is so beautiful, can I come hang out on your balcony and shoot the shit? And I get an immediate yes. Or I call a lot of the time. Love a phone call to just directly get the answer and not have to logistically text back and forth. Like, that's so convenient. And really enjoy just the simplicity of having company to watch a sunset. But you don't know in Seattle if you're going to see the sunset every day. So that's the kind of thing that, like, you have to just be at the whim of the sky. There was plenty of just, hey, what are you doing at 10 a.m. on a Saturday? Do you want to go for a walk? And I'm on a bus ride home, and then we meet up and we go for a walk, and then we get lunch, and the day follows in an order not previously conceived of. We were fortunate enough to be graced with the Northern Lights a few times this year, and both times I was able to text and be out the door driving to a remote location to see them. And I was so grateful, because if I lived in my old neighborhood, like, I would have missed the grandeur of them. I would have been able to see them from where I lived, but I would have done it alone. And it was so special to, like, share that with somebody and see it for the first time and lock that in together. There was one time this summer I was low-key getting broken up with, and my friend calls me while I'm getting broken up with. And I was like, hey, I'm getting broken up with, but, like, I'll be free in like 15 minutes. And then we got to meet up and go sit in the park and gab and gab and gab. And, like, you don't know when you're going to get broken up with. Like, you need to be able to flex and see people for instances like that. In that case, it was very amicable and fine. But I felt so assured that I'm like, I have the resource of friends available to me. It's nice to have one resource in my life that is not overmined or like suffering from, well, there are forces that seek to destroy our friendships, like our jobs. Okay. And to press further into why spontaneity is so generative is because it allows for more playfulness and creativity in what you're up to when it's not so predetermined. You can meet up at the park and then decide to go to dinner and then decide to go to your other friend's house, and then you all go to a show, and you can't do that if your life is so buttoned up and so scheduled. You can't, like, allow for mysterious occasions to happen. So now let's explore the principle of campusification, which is a phenomenon I experienced in the field this year, but not something foreign to me altogether. Other campuses I have known would include school, especially college, where you're living and learning within a dense campus, and then to some extent, work. To me, the defining trait or identifying question really for whether or not you're experiencing campusification is whether or not you're experiencing a spate of run-ins. Look who I just ran into on the campus of my life. Look at that. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. Like, at this point, I cannot leave my house without running into somebody I know. And that embrace of familiarity is so grounding and rooting and comforting, and it's irreplaceable. Like, there's no other more like potent way to feel a sense of belonging than to feel known. However, to feel that belonging and to feel known, you have to let people know you. And that's a tall order for some of us. For me, sitting here with a microphone blabbing in a public forum, clearly I want to be known. So campusification has really condensed that for me. Because if you want to see people more often, the best way to do that is to see people more often. I remember when I was touring the college I ended up going to, one of the most compelling features of the tour was that within 60, 90 minutes walking around campus, there were like 10 to 15 people that recognized him and said hello. And for some reason in my head, instead of just believing that person to be like uber popular, I was like, oh, that's how this school works. And then I went there and then I became a tour guide and I realized on those tours, no, when I walked around campus for 90 minutes consecutively, I would see at least 5, 8 people I would know. And then there would be a bunch of other people that would just say hi because they knew as a tour guide, it was compulsory for you to say hi back. Like that was like a part of the campus culture. But I've always been drawn to that sense of togetherness and that true like lack of atomization. Like suddenly you're bumping around, you're not in a vacuum anymore. I started aggregating the data of my run-ins, and in no particular order, here are some of the points on the graph. I got dinner with 3 people, and then as we were walking through the park, I ran into another friend, and then on our way back from getting ice cream, I went to 3 friends from the comedy scene on the way to an open mic, and then I see my other friend playing volleyball, and then I ran into the same 3 friends from comedy again. So at that point, if you want to live isolated and be a loner, you can't. Like as long as I leave my house, I have opportunities without even scheduling them or even texting or coordinating with someone to see people. Like I truly have like a campus center. I know there are key parts of like my walkable 15-minute neighborhood that like, if I kind of want to see somebody I know, I could sit there for an hour and I would. And that's so refreshing and encouraging after so many years post-college missing that. Now I have like mascots of my Seattle experience. There's people that I see all around town, like these eccentric characters that just represent like the spirit of where I live. I can be walking down the sidewalk and run into my 2 friends eating dinner on a patio. And then the next day while biking home, run into them a block away, 24 hours later. One time I was walking back from hanging out with a friend and I see my other friend crossing the street and I yell out to her. And then we literally spent the afternoon together and she had just gotten broken up with. And I just truly felt like I found her at the moment I was meant to. Like I can come back from a pride party and when I get to the street corner, who do I see but one of my dear friends with one of her friends, and we get to do a little mini 5-minute debrief of our pride weekend and then go our separate ways. When otherwise it was so hard to schedule and see her. I can run into acquaintances at the grocery store whose names I barely remember, and yet we have an amazing 15-minute exchange where they tell me about this gay-ass campground that they're going to that weekend. And that's amazing. There's times where I've been walking on the sidewalk and I see someone I know and it's just a quick wave. But that is so life-affirming. It stays with me. Like that reassurance of being in the right place at the right time is so uplifting. It also means that like when I go to the events in my neighborhood, I'm just so much more likely to bump into somebody that I know. And in that way, it's so much less daunting to go alone if I know that I'll probably see a familiar face there. When I know this force of proximity is bringing us together again and again, I don't feel pressurized to squeeze like bi-weekly hangs out of every friend because I'm like, oh, I'll just see them around and like we can make plans if we bump into each other. But on the other side of this coin, sometimes it's really embarrassing to live 5 minutes away from a friend and not see them for like 3 weeks at a time because you're like, what's my excuse? Like I have no excuse, you know? Okay, I know I wrote aftercare up there and some of you got scared, but what I mean by that is the unexpected delight of going to and from the hang jointly. Basically bookending friendship with more friendship. Again, as someone who currently lives at home but does not wish to exist this way forever, it can be so stark to go from spending like nonstop time with one person, with a few people at a whole party, and then to go home and you're immediately by your lonesome. It's just very stark versus now it's like whether we're going to an event that's in a different neighborhood or going to something within our neighborhood, there's usually at least one person that's like walking back the same direction as me, or taking the same bus the same direction as me, or taking the same light rail, or we can split an Uber, worst comes to worst. Like, that's just so, again, comforting. I love picking people up on my walk to somewhere, or a friend dropping me off on their walk home. No car needed. Or like, we don't know what we're going to do. Let's just meet equidistant from our apartments and go from there. I noticed this when I took a flight to Mexico with two of my friends from Seattle. After a long stint of like all of the flights I was taking, I was doing solo. You know, I was taking a flight to go visit friends in New York or Cleveland or Denver, or I was going back home to see my parents in California. But this was a trip where I had some buddies to weather the travel difficulties. And even on a micro scale, like in Seattle, if there's bus delays or we have to like figure out crazy weather, it's just nice to have company to do that with. Insert other common sense positive feeling that I'm getting from this experiment. Where is the negativity? Where is all of the hindrances of this? I will reserve a small section for that at the end. Also, one of the pivotal reasons I enjoy the bookend of the hang is that we get to debrief. We get to have a little bit of chisme, get to, you know, talk shop a little bit, or even just, you know, if we went to a comedy show or concert, like really decompress and analyze it together. And that is what it's all about to me. This piece of the formula probably has a little bit more material weight than the others, and that's the ease and favorability of favors and errands. And as somebody who lives alone and doesn't have any like blood family in Seattle, finding people who I can rely on, who will advocate for me, who will support me with lending me their car when I need to pick up a Facebook Marketplace item. I love to take care of my friends' plants while they're out of town. I've had friends drop off leftover food before they go away that is going to spoil. And then I have like some free groceries in my fridge. There's spontaneous deliveries of baked goods, little grocery runs together, lending like tools to each other, camping gear. In many ways, living close to my friends kind of feels like we have one shared storage unit. Like, I would love to have my life and my block feel like one big library. And I'd love to set up more of like a lending library system with my neighbors and my friends, because it just means that you don't have to rely as much on like Amazon, on consumerism, on, you know, paying for conveniences when your friends are willing to make things convenient for you. Okay, let's briefly talk about not social life, but work life, because moving closer to my friends also influenced my job and my enjoyment of it, because I was working remote / self-employedly for the year I was participating in this study. And when I was a resident of my previous neighborhood, I would be alone inside, working solo, cut off from conviviality. And pretty shortly thereafter moving, suddenly it wasn't such a big ordeal to get lunch in the middle of the day with my friends who work traditional 9-to-5s or also work remote. We could just cut away. And because it was a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute walk, it wasn't a hard sell. And that gave me a much needed sense of companionship during the day, since I didn't have any coworkers. And I also found that co-working with friends whose jobs differ, you know, greatly from mine became much more accessible. Meeting up at a coffee shop and being on our laptops in parallel. I basically created a little office hang vibe.
Cute. Oh, you're recording. Hey.
Hey. I'm recording here with my live studio audience. It's also beautiful to have so many people around when it comes to building attention and like rallying care for community causes. Like, if there's a park in your neighborhood that's going to be shut down, if there's a corner store that got broken into and needs like fundraising, if there's a bus route that they want to add but you need to vote for it, because I already have like so many people I'm associated with in this neighborhood, it's not as difficult to like garner attention and interest in these matters. And also, like, events in my neighborhood are much easier to find plus ones too. Like, if I do want company at something, it's a much lower lift when I'm only asking someone to walk 5 minutes to go to yoga or to stop by this random lightsaber fight that I saw on a poster on a telephone pole that's happening in the park. And it might be a bust, but like, it's no skin off our back just to go. Is that the phrase? No skin off our back? No skin off my fucking back. That's a weird fucking phrase. No skin off my back. Or to like check out astronomy night in the park that just is setting up last minute. It's truly just like a lower barrier to entry for hyper local stuff rather than having like citywide things that you're trying to build up with your friends. Okay, last discovery of the experiment before we dive into some of the negatives is that there's a multiplying effect to doing this. The number of friends that I started out with in my new neighborhood is not the number of friends in my neighborhood that I ended the year with. Like, it grows and it grows just because, like, when you're around more, you get to see people's people more. There's also, importantly, not just an element of moving closer to your friends, but also making the people you moved closer to your friends. And by that, I mean, take care of your neighbors. When I first moved into my building, I was resolute to be on at least friendly terms with my neighbors. And somebody in my building that's lived there for 30 years told me day one, as I was loading my mattress in, you know, people here aren't too warm, too friendly. And I said, well, maybe I'll be the one to change that. And within a couple months, I had my housewarming. I personally handwrote a note for every single neighbor's door to invite them. And 4 of them showed up. 2 of them left me a bottle of wine because they couldn't go. I've met others in the hallway. And there's now like more of a building culture where when I was sick, I needed a thermometer just to, you know, check my temperature. I didn't want to buy a whole one because I was like, surely somebody in this building has a thermometer. So I texted a few different people. 2 people had it. One person was like, I don't, but I'll try to find one for you. Like, so generous. There's construction next door. It's nice to have people to commiserate with about that. Have, you know, some talk of the town, literally. Multiple people have gotten locked out and we've been able to save each other because we have each other's numbers and contact info. We watch out for each other's mail and people always, you know, take it upstairs and drop it at your door for you if they're going up that way anyway. There was one time I was short a couple quarters to finish my load of laundry and I didn't have time to go to the store. My neighbor lent me. Spotted me, no problem. I've taken care of my neighbor's cat before. We all went to our neighborhood block party together. We celebrated Mabon or the fall equinox together. We get to check out illicit rooftops nearby. One of my neighbors offered to take me to Costco. One of my neighbors gave me flowers because he had extra. We go to yoga together. You know, we bump into each other in the lobby and we get to debrief our work days. I've gotten album recommendations from my neighbors. It's very ordinary acts of care, but they become infraordinary. They become special when you pay attention to them and they amount to something bigger. And this experiment would not be the same if I had not put energy and effort into befriending my neighbors, because now I have like a handful of people in the building. Like last night, a couple people needed zip ties. I brought them down. They poured me a cocktail, ate some chips and dip, played with their cat while they decorated Christmas stuff. They came up to my apartment. It's so ambient and relaxed because it's like we're literally in our pajamas. We're just shuffling around. It feels like you're in a dorm again, right? Like, in terms of the negatives, I do have to say there are none. There are none. No, I mean, I do pay about $300 more in rent per month to live in my current neighborhood as compared to like a similar unit in my last place. I do have more space and like, I would say it's like a more established apartment. But there's that financial consideration. But ultimately, I'm happy to pay that for the dividends that my quality of life has seen. Like, I have not seen like one decision in my life so sharply turn my sense of fulfillment and happiness. The only like negatives were basically fears and risks that like commenters posed onto me, which is that like you commit to moving to this neighborhood and then all the people in that neighborhood move. And it's true that like as renters, a lot of times you're priced out of your unit and you have to go elsewhere. And so people that may live in your neighborhood may move. But in general, a lot of the people that I moved closer to had been living in this neighborhood for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So I wasn't that concerned about them moving. And when people do move, they tend to move within the neighborhood. So they're still within like a 15, 20-minute radius walk. As compared to like my friends in New York and Brooklyn, it sounds like people are moving like whole neighborhoods all the time. You know, I'm reporting on year 1 of this, like maybe in 8 years, things will be very different. But as of right now, I truly did not have many discoveries of harm or negative externalities, you know? In conclusion, this experiment killed my loneliness. Like, this move smoothed out so much of the friction of my social life that it's no longer rough out here for me. Like, I can spend a night alone if I want to, but if I don't, I am steps away from seeing people. And like I said before, if I don't even want to coordinate, there's sort of like spaces that I can show up to, watering holes of sorts that I know I'm going to bump into somebody as well. So it's like, it's a sense of safety that I hadn't previously known being a transplant and living in a city that I don't have roots in. I am living proof that like making changes works. Like for me, when I was reading a bunch of articles about moving closer to your friends and hearing anecdotes about utopian little situations, I felt jealous. And then I was like, let me just, as Julia Cameron would say, use that jealousy as a map and plot some points to meet those coordinates. Now I have what I've wanted for so long. I can hardly believe it, that it just took like truly situating myself and changing my environment. And I recognize that I also had the means to change my environment, which is really important. Like, I ran this experiment because I'm in the position to. And so I felt like if I wasn't resourceful and I didn't use what was in my power, I would be failing myself. You know, like I have to give myself the opportunity to see this through. And to answer my hypothetical question up at the top, my actual hypothesis of this study, like, yes, I'm fulfilled. Yes, I'm so much happier. Like, yes, I feel so much more a sense of place and like belonging and connection and like intermeshedness that gives me a greater sense of security, purpose, and energy ultimately. And it can be overwhelming. I still feel like there's more conditions of my life that I aspire to. Like, I would love to co-live and I would love to have like co-housing. I'm not there yet, but I'm reading Substacks. I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm learning up. I'm socializing my friends to see who might be down. Like, you know, you make little steps. And if you let people know your interest, a lot of people do want to help others. For example, like part of the reason I love where I live now so much and I didn't think I would like my actual like neighborhood so much, but my friends that already lived there knew me. And so they made suggestions that's like, you should live here and here or here and here rather than here and here and here and here. And I felt so touched by that they would use their, like, our intimacy granted us that specificity. And so I was not misled, but like just led, you know, I was led. And in some ways, that's what this experiment feels like. I was led by many articles. I was led by my friends and I followed. And I was rewatching the video I made announcing that I was going to do this. And at the end, I was asking myself, like, do I think this will be a mistake and I'll regret this? No, like there's no way I will. And like 100,000%, like I would make this decision like 100 times over, you know? So hopefully it doesn't all fall apart. If anyone has been preying on my downfall, it has not been working. So please, if you have any more questions about this study as a participant, as a researcher, leave those in the comments below. I will be there. And if you're wondering how I even made friends to move closer to in the first place, that is a video I will be working on in the next few months. So subscribe and that will appear in your feed in due time. Thank you so much for watching this one. I will see you all next time, and Katherout.
Funny as fuck.
It's funny?
Watching your videos, Catherine,
Yeah.
I will say you translate better in real life.
Well, definitely, yeah. Who doesn't?
But there are people who don't. And
Well, I don't have anyone to play off of in my videos, so how the fuck am I gonna, you know?
but like I watch your videos and I'm like afraid that some people watching don't get it. But I'm like, oh, I'm dying laughing. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know her in real life.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, got this.
Right.
My tears. I don't know. So I hope you guys like are getting it. Catherine's a really funny person.
The corner of your forehead.
She's really funny.
Oh.
You're feeling this, folks.
And that's a friend that doesn't live near me but needs to.
Okay.
What do you have to say for yourself?
I don't really have too much to say at all. Unless people have questions for me. Drop them in the comments, I can answer. Yeah, like when Catherine posts the video, I will look through the comment section and I will answer the questions that correspond to me. So let me
What
know.
if there's 1,000 comments?
I will respond to every single one. It might take me a few days. Or, well, I will, if there are 1,000 comments and only some are directed towards me, I will read all of them. And I will respond to the ones that are meant for me.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you guys.
Well, right, what should I talk about here? What should I talk about here? Well, okay. Well, let's talk about something here. Yes. Okay, let's talk about this.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.